What really grieves me about the Anthony Weiner case is that there is a human story here. And there is a story that's not just affecting Anthony Weiner. We're going to see more men like that in the headlines. If you look over the last 2 years, just about every 8 weeks we've gone through a cycle of another one of these men crashing and burning. I use the mythological reference to Icarus, the character who flew too close to the sun in his pride, melted his wings of wax, and tumbled into the sea to his destruction. I call them Icarus men. They climb so close to the pinnacle of fame, and then they throw it all away, crash and burn, and wind up devastated and in ruin. In the Anthony Weiner case, he is going for treatment, and I was very encouraged that there was a recognition that this was something he needed help with. But then I was immediately discouraged when I found out that the treatment is to a bogus kind of non-diagnostic thing that we can all snicker about, being a sex addict. It's a lot deeper than that. The behavior goes back to the history, it goes back to some really, really treatable mental conditions. And to say it's a sexual addiction is to trivialize it. And it also says to me that perhaps he hasn't really come to terms with it. Because what man prefers being called mentally ill or having some kind of a non-dramatic thing like OCD rather than being called, wink, wink, nod, nod, a sex addict? And so I really hope that whoever does provide this treatment, that they do look at it more seriously, that they do rule out some of the compulsions, some of the mood disorder, some of the addictions that probably, and this is the very significant thing about what I'm calling the Icarus Complex, is that some of those traits are indeed responsible for his success. Somebody who is obsessive, who works around the clock at his congressional duties, is most likely going to be very good and really achieve a certain level of fame and certainly success in their field. But then it just gets to the tipping point. And then once it gets to that point, the pressure is so high that there are defenses against this stress and anxiety that are put into place. And what are those defenses? They're tried and true. Sexual escapades, infidelities, going with hookers or mistresses, drugs, alcohol, manic financial deals, spending money in ill-advised ways. These are the ways that people can destroy themselves. We cannot reach out to the Icarus man, because when he is flying high, when he is possessed of this euphoria that comes from that mania, he's on top of the world. He's not thinking what's coming around the corner. I think the people that we have to reach out to are the people who love them, their wives, their family members, and the people who work with them. Everybody in the Congress saw that Anthony Weiner was burning the candle at both ends. They said that he fired campaign directors and office managers about every 3 or 4 months. Nothing personal, they just could not keep up with him. And nobody can keep up with that. And I think we have to educate the public about what I call a social disease. They're not the pumped up macho alpha males. They're not naturally winners. They're not terrific physical specimens or brilliant tacticians or coming from huge and wealthy and powerful families. They're ordinary guys that tried harder. And in that trying harder, they could not for 1 minute let go. And so they burned themselves out. And we have to take a look at these toxic forces that are in our society. It's up to the people who surround these Icarus men and the people who are, in a way, getting the benefits of their success to say, wait a minute, this is problematic. Of the Icarus men that I treat in my practice, many of the wives who have stood behind them through horrible scandals have said that for years they saw this coming. They saw their husbands withdrawing. They saw their husbands becoming workaholics. They saw them drinking too much. They saw inexplicable bills and extra cell phones and suspicious things, and they knew their husbands needed help, but they were not ready to go for help until pretty much their backs were against the wall. When these men crash and burn, do they stay immolated on the ground? What happens? It seems unspeakable. They've burned every bridge behind them. And the answer is that if they get treatment, their own individual treatment for whatever the emotional issues are that precipitate this behavior, they can recover from that. They also need marriage counseling. I have very, very inspirational words from one of my patients who is the wife of a man who was involved in a cyber sex scandal. And she said that when she went for counseling with her husband and when they both went for their individual therapy, because Icarus is an outgrowth of what happens in the marriage to a large extent, that their marriage was finished, that is, as it had been constituted before, and that they were able to make a new and healthy and balanced marriage to the extent that they actually renewed their vows after 20 years. And so that can happen in terms of the marriage. In terms of the public eye, there's another thing, and that is, as much as we Americans love a juicy, dirty, naughty sex scandal, we love a comeback even better. We love to see somebody that's been down to the bottom and reinvents themselves and comes back. And I truly think that Anthony Weiner can be this person. He's done a great job in his areas. He's been elected 7 times. His constituents love him. He can ride this one out. And we love to embrace somebody that we've knocked off their pedestal, and then they've picked themselves up by their bootstraps and they've triumphed. That's the American way. The studies show that after you've been all over the front pages, within 14 months, people will not even remember what you were on the front pages for, but they'll remember your name.